Folks, Roland Martin here. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Monday, June 17th, 2019. Black folks are under attack by police departments across the country. We'll give you a roundup of cops gone wild in Baltimore, Arizona, Brooklyn, as well as Arkansas. The Poor People's Campaign held their presidential forum today with a focus on what they need to do to get poor people's votes. We'll show you some of what was said. Also, comedian Tiffany Haddish has canceled her Atlanta appearance over the state's new abortion law. Will this lead to others canceling as well? And why did Cuba Gooding Jr. have to do the perp walk in New York after being charged with a misdemeanor crime? We're going to break it down with our panel. And oh my God, guess what? A white boy has now has gotten his admissions taken from Harvard. And he's so upset, he's whining and complaining because 2 years ago, he used racist language. Conservatives are really upset. Get the hell over it. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
Folks, stunning cases showing police abuse all across the country. We'll start with what took place in Brooklyn. Nicholas Simon, a 17-year-old student who is a DJ, has a medical problem that keeps him from going to school. As a result, his parents homeschool him. Folks, he was recently coming home from the park in Brooklyn when this actually happened. Folks, what the hell was that? Joining us now is Nicholas' attorney, Keith White. Keith, welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thanks for having me.
First and foremost, why was Nicholas taken down by 7 cops?
So let me give some additional context. Nicholas is 5'3". He weighs 119 pounds. And so to your point, there's no reason that he was approached by that many police officers to take him down. Not only that, he was never aggressive. He was never refusing. They didn't say anything to him. And so what they did is they essentially ran up on him, pulled up the cars, grabbed him, threw him on the floor, put their knees in his back. He has scars on his back. Put their knees in his head, placed him in handcuffs behind his back. And if you continue looking at the video, they lifted him by those handcuffs. So he's lifted by the handcuffs off the ground and thrown into a police vehicle.
But why was he stopped in the first place? I mean, literally, when you watch the video, he's walking down the street. All of a sudden, a cop car pulls up. They jump out, grab him, throw him to the ground, and then another car comes up, and then they also do the exact same thing. Why was he stopped?
So he was stopped for no reason, to be clear with you. But let me say this. People have been asking me that. People have been sending me messages on social media. Hey, but what was he doing to be stopped? And that's problematic. He was not doing anything. He was walking home from the park. There had not been a previous incident. He was not accused of anything. And so after this incident, after he was detained by these police officers, he was arrested, taken to the precinct. They couldn't find a reason to keep him, so they charged him with disorderly conduct and acting in a manner that was violent.
Okay, wait. Okay, this is what I'm trying to ascertain.
Right.
So there wasn't some call of a nearby robbery, and there was a suspect who was described wearing a red tracksuit, nothing along those lines. So there was nothing that precipitated, like, what was the actual, so was there any rationale? Was there some nearby call of somebody beating somebody, doing something, anything like that?
There's nothing of record that has been produced to myself or to Nicholas's family that indicates that there was any call like that there was anyone in any imminent danger, that there was some threat, to the general public who was wearing a red hoodie and a backpack and dribbling a basketball up the block coming from the park. There's no indication that happened.
And the reason I'm sitting here with this stunned look on my face is because you watch the video, they get out of the car, they don't even ask him any questions. He is immediately taken down to the ground.
Right. And I think that's one of the problems that we experience in marginalized and underserved communities, right? Is that that's allowed to happen because the expectation is that he must have done something wrong. And so that's also the question that I'm getting on social media and all over the place is people are saying, well, he must have done something, or there must have been something going on to allow this. And what I'm saying is that there's no indication. The police have not given a statement. They've been requested, right, to provide a statement as to what's happening here. And no one has an answer because this is the type of rogue policing that's allowed to go on in marginalized communities.
What's next for Dude? What's next for Nicholas? First of all, when did this incident actually take place?
This incident took place on Wednesday, June 12th, and it happened at 6 p.m. on Rogers Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. And so the next step is that the charges are going to be dismissed. It's there's no way that this case is going to go forward criminally. We're going to get the charges dismissed. That's what I do. And then the next step is to sue.
Well, but again, the charge is disorderly conduct. What the hell was the conduct? Bouncing a basketball?
Right. It's the most straightforward example of police abuse, right? And I think that the reason why it hasn't gotten more uproar is because he survived. But had he actually been seriously hurt, had he God forbid died as a result of this, right, we'd be having a much different conversation. But why do we need to have our young Black boys hashtagged in order for people to care? And that's the point here. So that's why I appreciate you bringing light to the issue, because we have to continue to make noise in order for us to see changes.
Last question for you. What is the state of the mind of Nicholas? I mean, first of all, if you're a young Black man, you go through something along these lines, it's traumatic. And so how is he doing mentally and physically?
He's traumatized. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating this. You know, Nick is a DJ. You know, he's a young kid who's very popular in his community for being a DJ, but he's quieted. And he's quieted in a sense that he doesn't necessarily want to talk to people. He doesn't, when he sees the police now driving by, he's like, he gets up in arms. And so he's got some bodily scars that he has to, that have to heal. But he's got some mental scars and some traumas that have to be processed and unpacked, in a whole nother way.
Certainly give our regards to Nicholas and his family. We're going to stay on top of this. Keith, please keep us updated because we certainly do not want this to be ignored. You're absolutely right. Mainstream media, the cable networks, they haven't done anything with this. And had Nicholas been getting killed, sure, all of a sudden it would be a story. Also, I want to thank the people on social media who have been talking about this, who also brought to my attention as well. And that's why we wanted to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Keith White, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, folks, let's go to this other story, which is folks have been talking about all weekend. In Phoenix, one of the worst cases of abuse of police power we have seen in a long time. A 4-year-old, without her parents' knowledge, walks out of a dollar store with a doll. Let me repeat that. A dollar store with a doll. Then this happened.
Police?
Yeah.
You're gonna fucking get shot! Get your fucking hands off!
Get out the fucking car! Get out the fucking car right now! Yes, get out now! Get out the fucking car!
You fucking hear it? Get out of the fucking car!
You recording it?
Yeah, I'm recording it.
Put your hands up. I don't give a shit. Put your hands up. Hands up.
Break your feet! When I tell you to do something, you fucking do it!
I'm sorry, I'm just on the side.
You're not complying with me!
Yes, I am.
When I tell you to do something, you fucking do it!
I am. I'm complying with everything, sir.
Okay, right now, shut your mouth!
Put the other key down. No one else is involved.
When I tell you to put your fucking hands up, fucking baby, nigga!
Hey, hey!
Whoa, sir, come down!
Oh, wait.
When I tell you to do something, you fucking do it!
Where the girl at?
You're not complying with me! When I tell you to do something, you fucking do it! I am. Okay, right now, shut your mouth!
Oh, look at these kids. Y'all get it.
Can I get the babies? Excuse me? Can I get the kids? Excuse me? Officer,
Duffy,
can I
shut
get
up.
the kids?
Duffy, go get her kids.
Can I
Go get her kids. Duffy, go get her kids. Hurry up. He needs to slow down, and those kids is right there. Duffy, go get her kids. Hurry up. Duffy, go get her kids, and the lady is pregnant. Duffy, go get her kids. She bringing it.
Folks, the mayor of Phoenix has apologized for the behavior of these cops, but they still have their jobs pending an investigation. Also, Jay-Z is also paying for their attorney. And the parents had no idea their child even took the doll out of the store. They were completely in the dark. Now, let's go to Arkansas, where a cop who clearly wanted to shoot this black driver, but he was not taking the bait. Watch this.
What I do wrong?
Shut your car off!
Come on, shoot me.
Shut your car off!
He want to shoot me.
Got a gun!
Where?
Gun!
Where?
Shut the car
Where?
off!
Where? My hand in the air.
Shut the car off! Shut
Nah, hey, come shut the car off. I ain't moving my hands. He trying to shoot me. He trying to shoot me.
Shut the car off!
Nah, I ain't moving. No, my hand in the air.
Shut the car off!
My hand in the air. My hand in the air. My hand in the air. My hand in the air.
Need units in Midland Heights.
My hand in the air. My hand in the air. All you gotta do is drive off. What I was doing? What was I doing? What was I doing? My hands in the air. My hands in the air.
Shoot me. You comply with the lawful
Shoot
order.
me. My hands in the air.
I'm not gonna shoot you, but you're not gonna move those hands.
My hands in the air. My hands in the air. You tell me to shut my car off so you can shoot me. Come on now.
The cop says all you had to do was drive off. The man then says, what did I do? He couldn't tell him what he did. You remember the front of the video, the cop said, gun. There was no gun. He was straight lying. But he was speaking into the radio and the body camera. That's what he was trying to also cover up. Finally, in Baltimore, a police officer got angry when a bystander criticized him for the way he was detaining another man. Listen and watch what this cop did.
Why don't you mind your business?
You need to stop that man sitting on the ground.
30. You got him? You got him?
I'm not running nowhere. Sir, get off me, sir. Sir, don't grab. Sir, get off me. Get the off me. Hey, look.
You need a Lowen Ashton.
Yo, what the y'all? Oh, my God. I'm suing y'all, yo. I'm suing y'all, yo. Record
On the ground. Sit on the ground now.
Man, you better.
Get on the ground.
Yo, what the
Get on the ground. Get on the ground.
Get your knee off of me.
Get on the
I'm
ground.
doing nothing
You need
to
a Lowen Ashton.
Bro. Yo,
Get on the
off of me,
ground.
yo. Hey, look, call my wife.
Ground.
Sit down. Call my wife. Sit down.
Sit down.
I'm not sitting on no ground, yo. I'm not sitting on no ground. I'm not standing on the ground.
Put him on the ground.
Relax. Yo, take these hands. Beat that shit out you, yo. Relax.
I didn't even do nothing, man. Be quiet.
Stand over here. Stand over there. Stand over there. That's Sarge right there. Stand over there. Stand over there. I'm listening. I'm walking out there from the Prez spot. I asked him, I said, why they got a man sitting on the ground with me? He came in, he charged me, rocked me, kicked me all on the ground. Why is you checking me? That is illegal.
He's under arrest, yes.
For what? For what? When am I under arrest?
Just got to jail. Take your charge like a man.
For what?
Take your charge.
What am I going to jail for?
Because you don't know how to act.
Do you hear this? I don't know how to act.
Hey, search him. He hasn't been searched.
The officer in Baltimore has been criminally charged, false imprisonment, misconduct in office. He was charged with assault. You heard him say, take your charge like a man, because he dared to literally question him. My pound, Dr. Cleo Monago, socio-political analyst and activist. Janice L. Mathis, Esquire, Executive Director, National Council of Negro Living, and Dr. Nyambe Carter, Department of Political Science, Howard University. Cleo, you work with law enforcement in Los Angeles. I want to show all of those back to back to back, because all we keep hearing, good cops, oh, few bad apples, but you saw what happened in Phoenix, in Brooklyn, in Arkansas, in Baltimore, all white cops, and how they were hyper-aggressive, targeting black people. And you literally have cops pulling guns out in Phoenix over a doll in a dollar store?
Roland, as you know, we've been talking about this issue for years. Maybe it's been, I don't know, almost 10 years now. And I have to reiterate, because this is redundant as well, I have to be redundant. I'm so glad that somebody invented these video smartphones, because as a result of that, as we know, we get to see these things going down. And I'm even more excited to hear that in each one of these incidences, apparently, the cops have been apprehended in terms of being questioned and put some type of punishment for what they've done, possibly. But what I'm concerned about, as usual, first of all, I'm very traumatized right now myself. That back-to-back craziness was difficult. I have to keep myself from crying, because I'm not trying to be crying on camera. But anyway, we have to be talking to our children about this, because the brother mentioned earlier about the young man in Brooklyn who was traumatized. It's important to understand that witnesses to this are traumatized. Black boys in particular, who wonder when their turn is going to come, are traumatized. And we got to talk to our children and alert them that it's not their fault. The attorney also mentioned that people that he had spoken to said that he must have done something. And I just hope it becomes clear to us, I'm talking about black people now, that when we see a brother or a sister in handcuffs being led to the police department, does not necessarily mean they actually done something. Because we have some anti-black impulses that we've been trained through media and through all the negative messaging that we have not really talked about as a people, so we can unlearn and unpack those impulses. And it's a good idea that people are filming this stuff. And I'm going to close with this. As I say every time, most of these cases don't make the media. Most of these cases, people don't think about taking their phones out. They're too traumatized to remember to do that. So black people, we need to step up and do something about this. Members of Congress, people who are in influential positions, we need to look at the fact that our children, our people, black men especially, and black people are being traumatized and assaulted for doing nothing. A dog coming out of a doll store. And cops are dealing, you talking about road rage, we're dealing with dysfunctional cop rage in this country. With cops taking out their fantasies on to control and take down black people because they have that fantasy, and they get to do it now because they got a gun.
Janice Mathis, when you look at this, when you look at all of these different cases, when you look at what's behind them, the case in Brooklyn, a young man just walking down the street, and all of a sudden looks up, and then he's taken to the ground by cops. Hell yes, this is traumatic for black people. And look, I'm here in Dallas right now. And you had a white man who was shot and killed today who went to the federal building, armed, Kevlar vest. I mean, he was ready for war. He was taken down. I mean, literally, it is a shock that black people have not gone to the extent of these crazy white extremists when it comes to their paramilitary gear, or literally how we are treated just walking while black.
Well, Roland, there are two forces that seem to be exacerbating what we're seeing. I, too, was stunned and shocked to watch those successive videos. I shouldn't be surprised. 30 years of practicing law in Georgia, I saw cases like that at least several times a year. But there are two forces. One is this rage, this enragement, this utter disgust and refusal to see black people as human beings entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that somehow young African-American men and black men in general and black people in general are just not quite human. We don't have to treat them quite like him. But the other thing is there's a permissiveness in the air that is exacerbating these feelings of low self-worth, competition that some people feel that they are losing.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about, you will not replace me. Who's trying to replace you? And where do you feel like you're being replaced at? That rage, but it is being fed and aided and abetted and exacerbated by what's going on in this administration. And we fool ourselves. But I think if there is a solution, it's going to come from doing a better job of screening. I don't believe in implicit bias, frankly. And I don't believe that you can train these kind of instincts out of people. The best you can do is avoid hiring racists in the first place as police officers. And we need to pay them better. But I am not a fan of saying there's more training. The law needs to be changed too, because this idea that anytime a cop says, well, I was afraid, well, think about how that young man must have felt saying, my hands are in the air. Now, he's got a gun pointed at him. And he's got to say over and over and over again. My heart started beating fast for him, because I kept wondering, when is this fool going to lose his composure and start shooting? My hands are in the air.
But, Roland, I want to say something just real quick. I promise I can be brief here.
Hold on, Cleo, 1 second. Dr. Carter, I want you to weigh in.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, the only reason I could watch these videos today was because I knew no one died in them. And that's the really unfortunate part of all of this, is that death is so common, we don't think about the less spectacular cases where people are just harassed. I mean, this woman in Phoenix was told to put her 1-year-old not walking baby on the ground, right, where that baby would have been burned, and God knows what they would have done to her, right, had she put that baby down. So it's all of these cases just show us how willing we are to believe police narratives. And honestly, in all of these cases, I think the police wanted these people to be shot and killed, because then they don't have a counter story. Because whether it's the man in Arkansas yelling gun, even though the guy clearly had his hands in the air and was no gun present, whether it's a Barbie doll in Phoenix, All these people needed some small provocation, even not, right? Because in Brooklyn, this young boy, and I can't even call him a young man, he's a boy, is walking home, and thank God for bystanders. Thank God for that woman in that yellow dress who walked around the police officers who were clearly trying to block her line of sight, and the young man in Baltimore who was talking about the lack of respect paid to us in our communities, sitting on the curb, people driving by, you're assumed to be a criminal. They were doing a warrant check. They didn't know whether this man had a criminal record. He had no charge against him, but he was being detained, and that young man said something about it because it's a routine disrespect. And that young man in that video who's saying he's going to sue the Baltimore Police Department, his harassment hasn't stopped because he's not had those criminal charges dropped. They've charged him with something else because what they do, like they did after that Eric Garner case, and as they do after so many of these cases, the police will continue to surveil you. They will harass you. They will harass your people, the people around you, your community, hoping that you trip up because they were going to get him on something because he was being smart, right? I mean, that's the only thing that cop didn't like, that he had the nerve to say something.
I'm arresting you because you don't know how to act.
Exactly.
You don't know how to act.
Right.
That ain't against
you
the
don't know
law.
how to act and then take it like a man.
Yes.
And the thing that it was also interesting is that in all these cases, not a single time has the police union, Fraternal Order of Police, said, damn it, you know what? Our people are wrong.
That's right.
This shouldn't have happened. Cleo, go ahead.
I also want to mention, just inspired by what I just heard, that 5 of the people that were involved in Ferguson who were protesters are dead, mysteriously. So I want to mention that in terms you mentioned surveillance, et cetera. But I want to say that...
that's a story that we've covered, trying to understand, you know what is going on there. And look, there's still no answers, and they're unsolved. 2 of them actually were found shot and burned in their cars. But go ahead.
She mentioned Trump. And I want to tell you, I worked at the East Los Angeles Sheriff Department in the late 80s. The same exact thing we just saw on video, because I witnessed with my own eyes, was one of the reasons why I quit and resigned from the police department, was going on back then. I want to make us real clear, because of Trump's insanity and how ridiculous and extreme he is, we're making a correlation. But I want people to know that, I mean, this kind of behavior and attacks and assaulting a black person. One time I was driving down the 10 freeway in Los Angeles, and I saw a sheriff. It was a woman parked on the side of the freeway, and he was literally banging his car into her car and pushing her car sideways. You understand what I'm saying? Her car was turned sideways, and he was pushing her car with the car. And I got out the car and said, what's going on? And he threatened to kill me. And I was working for the sheriff's department at this time. So I just want to say, just real quickly, that this is not new.
I'm not saying
it's this
new.
thing right here that's making it come to attention. We've been getting killed like this for a long time. I really don't.
One second. It's not new. It's not new.
She may be left.
But here's the piece here, Janice. The difference that we have here. 2 things. 1, you have proliferation of video cameras. Everybody now has a phone. 2, the reason it does matter when you talk about Trump is because under Jeff Sessions, under Bill Barr, the Attorney General, they have executed a strategy where they do not want to hold cops accountable. All Donald Trump does is go in front of cops and praise them and lavish them. Jeff Sessions said we're going to pull back on consent decrees because it was hurting the morale of cops. This administration and white Republicans do not want to hold cops accountable because they want them to keep doing this type of stuff.
I agree with that.
Yes, absolutely.
I agree with that.
Janice, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that when you think about the fact that the consent decrees were not just abandoned but reversed, you had the Justice Department switch sides in the case in Ferguson and in Baltimore, and to actively oppose the consent decrees. The judges that are flooding the federal benches that will be there for the rest of my lifetime and beyond, who can be counted on to find excuses for police misbehavior. It's difficult for me to understand how that could not exacerbate what we're seeing in the streets.
But Roland, there has been polls taken on the attitudes between blacks and whites about the police for the past 20 years. And no matter what goes down in terms of how they attack black people, most whites keep saying that what the police is doing is fine.
But
Democrat and Republican.
But I think it's a both and proposition. Both things can be true. No, I think it's a both and proposition. I think both of what you guys are saying can be true at the same time.
Sure.
I mean, and I think we also need to talk more clearly about the police unions, because police have always been weapons of the state used to discipline black bodies for any manner of things that the state wanted to do. But I do think these police unions, we have got to have a way to criticize them more clearly and confront them, because the power that they have, it's obscene. And the fact that they won't even see something like this and say, this does not represent us, lets us know that these people are not here to protect us, but to keep lining their own pockets and keep their pensions and everything else for them and their brethren.
All right, folks. Hold tight 1 second. First of all, shout out to Conscious Thought for his donation on our YouTube channel, folks. That you can actually give while the show is live. Conversation we're having, you're not hearing on mainstream television because, frankly, they're not trying to cover these stories. And so you can certainly give while you're on our YouTube channel. And then anybody who gives during the show gets a shout out right here on the show. And, of course, you can join our Bring the Funk fan club by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. When we come back, we're going to talk about a Supreme Court decision that deals with racial gerrymandering. And can you believe it? Clarence Thomas actually ruled for something involving black people. That's next. Roland Martin Unfiltered. Back in a moment. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. All right, folks, they're back. MarijuanaStock.org has another great investment opportunity. If you were lucky enough to invest in their last crowdfunding campaign, you know they raised a lot of money in just a few months investing in legal marijuana farms. Those initial investors now own shares of a publicly traded company. And, of course, they're excited by that. Now they have a new investment opportunity that is as good, if not better, than the last. I'm talking about industrial hemp CBD. For those who don't know, the hemp plant is a cousin to marijuana, of course, and then it has a higher concentration of CBD, which means hemp CBD gives you all of the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Now, until recently, hemp farming was practically illegal in the U.S. and heavily regulated by the DEA. However, that changed with the 2018 Farm Bill, making it legal to grow hemp CBD in the U.S. and creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. They need land to grow all of the plants, and this makes for an incredible investment opportunity. And that's where our good friends at 420 Real Estate come in. Their business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. You can invest in this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200 up to $10,000. All right, folks, all you got to do is go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org if you want to get in the game. And if you do so, do it now. All right, folks, today the Supreme Court chose not to accept an appeal by Republican legislators in Virginia when it came to their delegation, which was determined to be racially gerrymandered. They left in place a ruling that invalidated state electoral districts. The lines were drawn because they weakened the clout of black voters in violation of the U.S. Constitution. The justices, in a 5-4 decision, sidestepped a ruling on the merits of the case. They instead found that the Republican-led delegates lacked the necessary legal standing to appeal a lower court ruling that had invalidated 11 state House districts for racial discrimination. What that means is that the current drawing of the lines will be in place when they go to the polls in November. Democrats could take control of the Virginia House as a result of this decision. Let's go to our panel here. Janice Mathis, I want to start with you. Gerrymandering is a huge issue. One of the reasons why Republicans have been able to maintain control in these state legislatures is because of this very thing. So we're talking about Virginia, we're talking about Wisconsin, we're talking about North Carolina, Pennsylvania, a number of places. And so the court did not rule on gerrymandering But they clearly say it here that black voters were being disenfranchised as a result of how the lines were drawn. And what they do, Janice, they pack the black voters in these 11 districts to invalidate their power in other districts.
Certainly that is what it's designed to do, is dilute the black vote. It's just another one of the many tools that are used to undermine black voting power. And in a sense, you allow politicians to pick the voters that they want rather than having the voters pick the elected officials that the Voting Rights Act used to guarantee before it was gutted in the Shelby case. And so it's interesting that they use standing. Standing has been a popular tool for the court for the last couple of decades to avoid ruling on hot potato types of cases. And if Clarence Thomas voted along with the majority, that really is stunning. There once was a time where racial gerrymandering was considered to be fair game, but the court has been moving steadily in a different direction. I think we have to give Eric Holder and the National Redistricting Committee some props when it comes to fighting that and popularizing the issue so that we understand how important it is that you can't have 40% of the people be Republicans and 60% of elected officials end up being Republican. That's how it tends to turn out, is that if I can't win, then I'm going to change the rules of the game. If I don't like the way the elections are turning out, then I'm going to upend the elections and change the rules. Cheat a little bit, shave a few points.
Absolutely.
Dr. Carter, I want to go to you. Well, I need our people watching to learn to connect the dots.
Okay.
Because what happened, and follow me, I want you to speak to this. Because what a lot of people don't understand, and we had this conversation a few years ago on Washington Watch, the Sunday morning show I had on TV One. And Cornell Belcher said this. He said African Americans should be very strategic about how we look at politics. He said we may have to give up some black, quote, seats in order to expand our power. And there were people who were saying, what are you talking about? Because what he was saying was that, like in Texas, when they changed the lines, they created another district in Houston, which Congressman Al Green sits in. They did that to get rid of 5 white Democrats. And so what Cornell was saying is that we must look at African Americans, Latinos, and others and say, hey, don't just get excited. Oh, my goodness, we've got 15 black state legislators. He said it means nothing if you're in the minority. That's what we saw here in Virginia. They packed the black folks in to say, here y'all go. You got 11 seats, but you're in the majority, and white Republicans are still in control.
Right, and I think this is what people don't understand about gerrymandering. It is a constitutionally mandated practice, right, that we have to actually have legislative districts that look like the population. So as the population ebbs and flows, different states will have different a number of seats. So the process happens in the state legislature. So it's really important that you think about who your state legislators are, because those are the people who are going to be redrawing these districts, and the party in power usually redraws those districts for their party. But the thing is, it only happens once a decade. So you may be voted out of office, but you theoretically could have power for another decade because you were in charge of the process that redrew these legislative districts. So sometimes we have to really be mindful that if you say do majority minority districts, which a lot of black folks in the National Congress owe their seats to, were a good idea. But if that's all the representation you ever get, it may actually be a short-term plan that doesn't really bring long-term power. And I think that's what Cornell Belcher was getting at, is we have to think about these matters because they do have these ripple-out effects. So it's more important to have those black voters spread across more legislative districts where they might be able to get some friendly legislators. Maybe they're not from your same race, but they may actually be bringing forth policies that are actually bringing dividends to your community and be more reflective of the state as a whole, rather than giving you those same set of electoral districts and this limited number of representatives that actually are not able to be as powerful. And that's the whole goal when they pack like that. Even if they crack you, right, the same thing is to dilute your power. And there are a lot of ways that can happen. But unfortunately, the Deep South, because there are so many black people concentrated in certain places, they tend to stack.
Cleo?
That was basically a class on what to do about gerrymandering and what to do about political power. So these sisters kind of covered it all from my perspective. I'm just really fascinated with Clarence Thomas acting like he had some sense for once. I wonder what happened.
Well, and it was interesting because Stephen Breyer, one of the so-called liberal justices, ruled with the traditionally conservative justices. All right, folks. Let's go to our next story. The Poor People's Presidential Forum took place today in the nation's capital. They took place on the campus there. Reverend William Barber and repairs of the breach hosted more than 1,000 people from across the country. This forum was a lot different, where poor people were asking the questions to Senators Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, as well as Vice President Joe Biden. An opportunity was had to discuss solutions for systemic racism and poverty in the United States. Here are Reverend Barber's opening remarks.
Say, come on in and let's stand together. We are here because we believe in free speech, the right to protest, and for us, equal protection under the law for everybody is non-negotiable. Liz, we are here to let it be known if President Obama was president or Hillary had won, this campaign would have still launched because racism and poverty still too often and too much impact and harm lives of millions of Black, Latino, Asian, First Nation people in this country. We are here because there is a crisis in America. We are not a left movement. We are not a right movement. We're not a Republican movement. We're not a Democratic movement. We are a moral fusion movement. We're here because the beginning of the war on poverty some years ago didn't fail. It was sabotaged. It was assassinated. And we are here to return to the battlefield. We are here because, if anything, with the new administration, and we invited everybody. We invited to this forum Republicans, Democrats, even the president. We invited everybody because we have seen extremism and policy violence to the poor go on steroids, and false claims that the war on poverty is over. We are here because we hear a lot in our public life about voting values, but we hear precious little from those sources about valuing the poor and the low wealth. This is also not a campaign for the poor. This is a campaign with the poor because there are some people that have been working on poverty all their lives, but there's some people that's been living it all their lives and fighting it all their lives. We're here because the gains of America's union, civil rights, and human rights movement have been under attack by an elite minority of extremists who have waged a stealth attack on our public institution. We are here because, as Mary Wright Edelman said, we are seeing a massacre of the programs designed to help the poor and children and families in this nation. We are here because we can't be silent anymore. We are here because too much of this policy violence has been endorsed by a heretical form of extreme religionism that attempts to camouflage itself as Christian evangelicalism. That's why we're here. We are here to say that we are not a part of a spirituality that it believes that God is greed, Christ is cash, and whose goal is more akin to white nationalism than the religion of love and truth and justice. We are here, Liz, because pornographic sums of money, mysterious money, have been poured into campaigns aimed at delegitimizing the role of government and sanctifying market immorality. We are here because in 2016, we went through the most expensive presidential campaign in U.S. history without one debate out of 26 being dedicated to the issue of poverty, when 43.5% of our people live in poverty. Not one. We are here and building a movement because too often we see a nation where some want to guarantee corporations' welfare but do not guarantee basic needs for the poor. We're here because 400 families in this country make an average of $97,000 an hour while we arrest people who go in the street for 15 and a union. We are here because not just in Flint, but all over this country, people can buy unleaded gas and not unleaded water. We are here because while Congress is talking about tax policy to benefit the greedy and using the voodoo and ridiculous principles of trickle-down economics, 53 cents, nearly 60 cents of every discretionary dollar goes into the war economy. And it's not money that's going to health care, education, jobs, infrastructure, and a sustainable economy. And as my dear friend who slipped away into death in the Hudson River, Charlie Vanderhorst, said when he was alive with us, we can't stop because as a doctor, these policies and denying of health care are murdering my patients. We're here because our problem in this nation is not that we don't have enough money, it's that we don't have enough moral capacity to face what ails our democracy. And turn to your neighbor and say, it's time to change. We are here because one of the ancient prophets, Amos, who was a farmer, said in the 5th chapter of Amos, there comes a time, Brother Nosey, when spiritual people have to go out into the streets and lament loudly and fill the malls and the shops with the cries of doom and weep, not me, not me, not now, empty the offices, the stores, the factories, the workplace, and enter everybody into a general lament, a cry about what's going on if we want to see change happen. We are gathered here because even the Holy Father, Pope Francis, diagnosing this moral crisis of our time, he said the concentration of income in the hands of a few has become a conspicuous trend in the global economy. People discarded by our economies hardly interrupt the naive optimism of the trickle-down theory. Poverty grows alongside developments in technology that could reduce mortality rates, while hunger increases alongside possibilities of food productions at lower costs. Misery has become the norm for far too many. Personal isolation and anonymity are far too commonplace amidst the plethora of social networks. The super rich arrogantly praise the market.
Hey, folks, the candidates literally are speaking as we are live. Senator Bernie Sanders is now talking. We're trying to pull up their Facebook page to actually go to that live. We taped some of the other folks. We're going to be playing their responses throughout the week because the Poor People's Congress is taking place today, tomorrow, as well as Wednesday. We'll go by panel here. Janice, I'll start with you. Dr. Barber, repairs of the breach, they have really been focused over the last 3 years, mobilizing people, traveling the country, organizing them, and frankly, doing it old school. They, of course, use social media. They've used technology, but it's really been about the grind of talking and building. That's what they have been so focused on. You and I talked about that in the last election, how, look, this is a thing where you can't just go to these places today. Here's a television ad, a radio ad. You got to go old school precinct captains, block captains, folks who are responsible for streets going door to door to get folks out to vote.
I think what it builds on is a certain acknowledgement and genius of Reverend Barber to go old school. Dr. King's last campaign was a Poor People's March. It really started before he was assassinated and continued for several months after his death. It was the last big movement that Dr. King was involved in, was a program for economic justice. And at a time when we're facing income inequality and wealth gap that is almost unprecedented, at least since the 1920s, that it's an appropriate movement and appropriate methods. One of the things he did, he came to organizations like the one that I work for, National Council of Negro Women and Delta Sigma Theta, and got us to sign on to a set of principles. And Dr. Barber was so disciplined that if you weren't willing to sign on to those principles, he didn't want your endorsement. And I think that is old school. Let's say that's hardcore, but it was very effective in getting people to understand what it's really all about. I get tired of not hearing Democrats too timid to say the word poverty. They'll say the middle class and those who aspire to be middle class. What does that mean? The middle class and the poor. And if we can't name a thing, you can't help. You're not getting ready to solve it.
Absolutely.
Carter, bottom line is what he's also doing, they aren't talking to just black people and Latinos. They literally are going to broke-ass white folks and saying, look, y'all in the same position as us.
Absolutely. I mean, this is populism at its finest and its most ideal, really. I mean, this is something that he said over and over during this day, and he said it before, that this is what America, particularly wealthy Americans, don't want to see, which is a united front of poor folks, black, white, Latino, Native American, whatever, all comers. And I think part of this campaign, as he realized, is you have to touch people where they live. This is not something that you can do from afar. I mean, Dr. Barber is very charismatic, but he also understands people. And this is a people problem, and he's been very clear. This is about your day-to-day life. This is not about what you like or what you don't like. This is about your very survival. And that is not partisan, and that is not ideological. That's about being an ethical, moral person and caring about what's going to happen to the rest of us, to the least of us. And I think that's why he's been so effective, is he's gotten lots of people to see how their causes overlap and to see how their interests are actually really compatible with one another, even if they disagree on some parts.
Cleo, and no shock Donald Trump turned them down, but they're also putting the screws to those Democratic candidates, saying you are going to have to actually have real policies if you want our votes.
Dr. Barber is powerful. The man said in Flint, Michigan, you can get unleaded gas, but you cannot get unleaded water. That was really powerful, among other things that he said. I'm looking forward to seeing what the outcome will be of his multiracial work. Because from my perspective, people do one thing publicly and sometimes they do something else privately. But I'm very impressed with what he's doing. And of course, people like Donald Trump don't support him because it's scary. I mean, one of the things that is scary about him is optically, he's bringing people together beyond the racial narrative. And that's always scary. But we'll see what happens in terms of the white involvement over time. But I'm very impressed with this brother, and I hope his work is powerfully transformative in this country.
All right, well, Ash, we're going to go to this other story, folks. Actress and comedian Tiffany Haddish has canceled her upcoming Atlanta performance because of Georgia's new abortion law. She sent a statement to ticket holders saying that she can't, in good faith, perform in Georgia unless it withdraws the so-called heartbeat bill. Haddish was scheduled to perform on June 22nd at the Fox Theater. Janice, you spent a number of years running Rainbow Push there in Georgia. There's an interesting battle going on right now, Janice, because you have folks like Stacey Abrams, who's trying to convince liberals not to boycott the state, but to fight to change the bill. But then you have other Hollywood studios who said they're not going to shoot movies and do projects in Georgia. So it's real interesting, this battle that you have going on there as to what should be the natural response to this bill. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that Tiffany is a performer, an actress, and very talented person. And I think you need both of those kinds of voices. You need that centrist politician who's going to say, okay, let's sit down at the table and try to work it out. But you also need those like Tiffany who put pressure on the system. Don't think it's lost on Kemp and the other politicians in Georgia what that film industry means to Atlanta and to the rest of the state, and most particularly to that airport. That is the engine that keeps Atlanta running. Don't let nobody fool you. It's a perennial fight down there about who's going to control that airport. Yep. And when movie makers start talking about, well, maybe we'll just stay in California or go to Canada, that's a scary proposition. And so I would expect that sometimes you have to have a triangulation kind of strategy where you're playing three-sided pool rather than two.
Hold tight 1 second, folks. Right now, Senator Kamala Harris is speaking at the Poor People's Campaign in Congress. I want to go live to her right now.
And fighting for equality and fighting for fairness. And so when I then put that also in the context of what is morally right, I often think of the parable of the Good Samaritan. Because what the teachings are there from the book of Luke is it is about how do we define neighbor? Everyone knows, well, let us live as and treat our neighbor as we would want to be treated. But what I like about the parable of the Good Samaritan is about defining who is neighbor. Who is neighbor? And understanding neighbor is not about the person who shares your zip code. Neighbor is not about the person who lives next door and drives the same kind of car like you do, or the person who has kids at the same school you are. What we learn in that parable is neighbor is that person you are walking by who is homeless on the street. The neighbor is somebody, some child or young person who is a runaway and who is vulnerable or has been exposed to neglect or abuse. Neighbor is that refugee who arrives on our shores seeking the support of what should be the strong arms of our nation and an embrace, and not what we have seen from this administration was to flick them and say, go back to where you came from. Neighbor is about understanding and living in service of others, understanding that we are all each other's brothers and sisters. Seeing in each other a family member, a child, a friend, a mother, a father. And so when I talk about and think about then policy in that context, it is everything that I think about when I think about why I support Medicare for all. It is everything I talk about and think about when I say we need to lift up working families. It is everything that I think about when I say we need to pay teachers their value. We need to reform the criminal justice system. We need to help renters out. We need to see what is happening in our country and treat our fellow human being as we would our neighbor, as we would want for ourselves. And so that's how I think about the issues before us. And I thank you all, everyone here, for your service, for your leadership, for this being such a personal cause, which is to fight for the least among these and to give voice and to lift people up with all that they deserve around voice and around dignity. And so with that, I thank you.
Well, that was the opening comment of Senator Kamala Harris there, folks. And so, again, the candidates are all coming through, those 9 candidates. And so she was having me live while we're actually on. And so, again, we're going to have a lot more what each candidate had to say over the rest of the week, focusing on what the Poor People's Congress is doing and repairs of the breach and Reverend Dr. William Barber. Got to ask my panel about this story here. Cuba Gooding Jr. was arrested and charged with forcible touching after a woman accused him of groping her at a New York City night spot. After turning himself in to police on Thursday, he was led by officers out of the Special Victims Unit in handcuffs and charged. The charge was a misdemeanor. So when have you seen anyone doing a perp walk for misdemeanor? Let's talk about it with our panel here. Cleo, I want to start with you. It was just quite interesting to me to see that a misdemeanor. Really? What the hell was that about? What do you think?
I mean, what other new narrative can be brought up with to describe this? I mean, like you said, I mean, how many times have you seen it, particularly a high-profile person? I don't think I've ever seen it. Was Weinstein treated like this? Did he do a walk?
There was a perp walk, but
his charges were much worse.
I mean, you're talking about rape. And let me be real clear. I'm not minimizing the allegations, even though I've seen the video and it's sort of suspect, okay? But we're talking about a misdemeanor crime and you go for the perp walk. It was just, I just can't remember, Janice, seeing a misdemeanor charge and it literally is a perp walk.
Well, I've not seen it in a high-profile case, but of course, practicing law, I saw it fairly frequently that it didn't matter if somebody was, I mean, those charges that the films we looked at earlier today, those were all misdemeanors too. Disorderly conduct is a misdemeanor. It looked like they're trying to break that boy's back with their knee. So I think you don't necessarily can say that you don't see a perp walk because it's a misdemeanor. Depends on how outraged the police are and how bad they want revenge.
But is it particularly standard to do that with black people from your experience? Or is it?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say
I think that's an important point.
Yeah, and I think this is about embarrassing him, right? And creating the most humiliation possible. He had turned himself in. It was clear that he knew this charge was outstanding. He showed up. And this was just about creating a moment, right? I mean, this picture will forever live. And probably if you Google him right now, that's the first picture of him that will come up, regardless of his 30-year career he's had at this point. And that was the goal, to inflict pain and humiliation. And they do this routinely to black people, not just black men.
And to reinforce the stereotype.
Absolutely.
Of lawlessness and criminality.
And to show who has the power.
And black male rapists, which is a
Right.
very common trope.
Right.
I mean, we just saw this with the Central Park Five. I mean, this is sort of coming up again. But I mean, listen, this is common out of the police playbook. Right. So regardless of whether this is founded or not, he will forever be a perpetrator. Those pictures show it. Right.
Yeah.
That's the evidence that he is a criminal and he is guilty.
Yeah, just thought it was just quite interesting. Hey, folks, I was going to talk about the Parkland student who has now had his offer to Harvard University rescinded because of some racist comments he made a couple of years ago. I'm going to have to shift the discussion to tomorrow because of time. But I do want to play this for you, folks. This weekend, Shaft brought in $8.3 million at the box office, according to Box Office Mojo. And folks, of course, got an A cinema score. We saw it last week at American Black Film Festival. Absolutely hilarious movie. And so while we were there, we caught up with director Tim Story and Method Man about Shaft. And here is our conversation.
Hi, I'm looking for Shaft.
Who's asking?
John Shaft Jr., your son.
My son? Junior?
Yeah.
You know they say that cat Shaft is a bad mother.
Shut your mouth. Ignore him. He thinks he's a black James Bond.
That dude was real. He think he was me.
If you gonna pursue this investigation, I'm gonna have to babysit your ass.
Damn! Oh, look at here! How long has it been?
Never long enough. Lady Syphilis, Madam Chlamydia. It's lovely to meet you both.
That's Junior's mama. She a little bitter.
Please tell me that you did not get our son involved in your bullshit.
What is wrong with you?
She picked up a bat.
You can't beat up a woman.
Why not?
Because she's a woman. That's like misogynistic.
You the one being misogynistic. I ain't mentioned her gender.
Okay.
I'm an equal opportunity ass whooper. Damn!
All right, folks, here at ABFF with two great folks, Method Man, Tim Story, and, of course, Shaft. Yo, first of all, I was screaming, laughing in the theater watching it last night. I sent Sam a video. Hilarious. And everybody out there who kept tripping, talking about it was too much comedy. No, it was a great mix between comedy, action. No, I'm telling you, I absolutely enjoy it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I don't front.
Yeah, we tried to do
Not going to talk right into it.
Yeah, we tried to do what we did, you know. We wanted to give it a little bit of a spin. I think at the same time we kept Shaft respectable. He's still strong and cool, the man, but there's a lot to have fun with.
And Method Man, for you to be able to mix it up, just go ahead and grab the microphone there. For you to be a part of this, playing a cool ass club owner. Yeah. Now hold up, were you a club owner?
I was a club owner.
Or were you?
You know, slash the plug, slash, confidant, Shaft has a lot of, Shaft is basically a network in that whole Harlem area. So he's connected to pretty much everybody. And he knows where to go when he needs certain information. And I guess Freddie was on the card for the day.
Tim, when we talked on the red carpet, I told Sam, I said, Sam, for all of the talk about you being the ladies' man, you ain't get no ass in the first movie. And he said, yeah, you're right. I kept talking about it, alluding to it. He said, there was no alluding to it in this film. He said, wait till the first scene. The audience lost it. We all see it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So was that also a deliberate way you wanted, he gonna be the man, he gotta be the man.
He has to be. I mean, that's one of the things that me and Sam talked about. He's a ladies' man, and the fact that it wasn't shown before this, we had to correct that. So we did. I won't give away what happens it's in the trailer.
Hilarious.
It's a little something that makes sure you know Sam was doing his thing. Shaft was doing his thing.
So y'all also took a shot at a particular TV anchor. I
thought it was funny as all get out, and I just hollered laughing. And so Shaft took lots of shots.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Period. That's what he does. He has an opinion, you know.
I mean, honestly, that community could take a joke. Trust me, I know. I have a few friends that are from that community, and they're pretty cool with the jokes, man.
But again, no. The thing is, you made it contemporary. You brought it up to date. But then also you had to go old school. And Richard Roundtree is still the man.
He's the coolest man walking the earth, man. He's just too cool. You saw him on the red carpet. The red carpet in the movie, when he shows up, he's just, we put a gun back in his hand. We wanted to make sure he was properly represented in that light. And he's Richard Roundtree. What do you say? He's cool.
Now, you have all of this testosterone in the film, and I asked Jesse and Richard about this here. Method Man, I want to get your thoughts on it. The idea of black manhood. And that was the part where Sam talks about that, black manhood, what it means to be a black man, to represent a black man.
Right. Well, for me, I think what represents a black man is someone that's very tight with his family, handles his responsibilities, very honorable, and at the end of the day, identifies with who he is and loves himself for it.
And unapologetic, Tim.
Unapologetic.
Unapologetic. That is Shaft, and that's what he believes a man should be. You just own yours.
Got to own it. Last question, I'll ask you this. Sam made it clear last night before the movie that we are not passing the baton to Jesse.
Absolutely.
He was like, we ain't going nowhere.
Absolutely. There will not be another Shaft without Samuel Jackson. I'll tell you that.
See, that was Sam's way of saying me and Rich is still going to get checks.
Absolutely.
Jesse, this will not be our swan song.
Absolutely. No, we wouldn't see it any other way. You saw the three of them on screen together. They're hilarious. The chemistry is undeniable, and hopefully we can do it again.
All right, gentlemen, both good seeing you. Good luck with the movie. Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Uncle Roland. And get Laura Ingram's ass. I love it.
All right, folks, that was, you heard a little bit at the end there. Method Man has something a little special to say to Dr. Julianne Malveaux. So what we'll do is when she's back on the show, we're going to play that for y'all. Somebody got a little crush on Dr. Malveaux. All right, folks, I want to thank all of you for watching today's show. Of course, we appreciate all you have to say. Also, shout out to all the fathers. Yesterday was Father's Day. I'm here in Dallas. And so came to visit my dad as well. And so I want all of you guys to, of course, celebrate your fathers. We've seen lots of people, just all the great photos I keep seeing of folks posting images, whether they're celebrities or not, of them with their dads. And so it's great seeing all of that. Certainly want to thank Cleo, Janice, and Dr. Neon Carter for being on the panel today. Thank you so very much. And, of course, folks, I'll be back in the studio tomorrow. Don't forget, we're going to have more coverage of the Poor People's Campaign, all the presidential candidates, what they have to say about the issues. And so we'll have all of that and covering them. Also, tomorrow, we're going to have a live stream tomorrow from the Black Political Roundtable. And they're going to have their summit discussion on African Americans and the U.S. Census. And so you want to be able to sure whether you're on Periscope, Facebook, or YouTube, click your live notifications, or anytime we go live, you get an alert. So we're going to have that live stream for you tomorrow. We have a recap of that in our show tomorrow as well. And so you see what we do here, Roland Martin Unfiltered. We covered all our daily show. We also podcast this. You can subscribe to our podcast. We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We're on Google Play Store as well. So wherever you're podcasting, we're available. So please download our podcast as well. And we want you to support Roland Martin Unfiltered by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. And so please, we want you to go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, join our fan club. Our goal is to get 1,000 new subscribers, 1,000 new fans of our club in the month of June. And if you're already a member, you can go to RolandSMartin.com. You can get discounts on the books you see there on the site. And to be a member, if you are a member, have you not gotten your code, shoot us an email. We'll be sure to get it to you after we check to see if you actually paid. All right, folks, that's it for me. I shall see you guys tomorrow. All right, we're going to have a fantastic show tomorrow. We're going to talk about the white student, Parkland student, who's a little upset because he got into Harvard, but they pulled his admission. because he used some racist language and he said, I'm sorry. Wasn't that enough? Yeah, we'll discuss tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. How? You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.
Hey everybody, this is your man Fred Hammond, and you're watching Roland Martin, my man, Unfiltered.
Hi, this is Essence Atkins, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey yo, Peace World, what's going on? It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, my name is Brescia Webb, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Well, I like a nice filter usually, but we can be unfiltered.
What's going on? This is Tobias Trevelyan, and if you're ready, you are listening to and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
What's up? I'm Lance Gross, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, this is Cheryl Lee Ralph, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, could it be any other way? Really? It's Roland Martin.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play.